Fans, good evening and welcome in to the Coaches Show presented by Smith's right here on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700. And welcome into those of you streaming tonight, looking at our wide-eyed and beautiful faces here tonight for the basketball facility on Twitch and, of course, on the YouTube channel presented by Utah Athletics. I'm Bill Riley. Larry Krystkowiak with us here tonight as well. We're going to talk about the big wins over the weekend against the Bay Area schools and the trip to the Northwest this week against two, what they like to call Quadrant 1 teams right now, Oregon State and Oregon. We'll get to all that stuff, some honors for Utah basketball and more that we've got to talk about. All that on the program tonight right here from the basketball facility. And we welcome in the head coach. How are you?
Doing good, Billy. Real good.
Good weekend, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I thought we made some good strides defensively in both ball games. Nice crowds, and had some guys stepping up that hadn't been a big part of our rotation, and some of our young kids are really starting to grow and develop, so thought it was positive.
It looked for a minute like you might have the offensive stuff figured out for a stretch there in the Cal game. You guys really found a good groove in the first half.
We had that groove, too, in the Stanford game.
Yeah.
Early in that game and overtime. But I'll tell you, Cal plays really hard. They ugly up games a little bit. It gets into lower possessions, and you have to grind it out. And Stanford, based on the numbers, was the top defensive team in our conference. There was some challenges that they presented, but we had some good stretches, and I think guys played together for the most part and knocked down just enough shots to get W's in both ball games.
Let's start first with the Stanford game. That was what we like to call a Quadrant 1 win by the new net ranking system. They were a team that was in the top 25 of the net rankings. They were near the top of the Pac-12 conference. They came in with a guy that was having a career week, at least, in Oscar da Silva. And you guys kind of took away some of the things they like to do offensively. Now, that was an ugly game, too. That thing kind of got down in the mud just a little bit, which I think you were okay with. Ended up going to overtime. What did you like most in that Stanford game?
Well, I thought we were really good defensively. We set a season record for deflections. We had a number of kills when we rated it out. The defensive rating, it was as good as we've done all year. So, and we needed to be just that sharp to win a game like that in overtime. But I thought we did a really good job on Da Silva with the double team plan, and I really think our team has grown in pick and roll. Both Stanford and Cal, an awful lot of pick and roll coverage with good guards, and we were active in our coverages, at very few blown coverages, and we've always talked about pick and roll needs to be guarded with 5 guys. And, a lot of times I think the general thought is it's just the 2 guys that are involved, but you've got to have the right tag person, you've got to have good rotations, you've got to have really good energy, and then on closeouts, make sure we're guarding the paint, and it was good. I just know for a fact that our team has grown, and that Coach Hill's done a nice job defensively as our defensive coordinator, working on some things, and we've done a bunch of different shell sessions with pick and roll coverage. But I think our guys, and that's such a big part of the game, as the pick and roll coverage. So I was really proud of that. And neither team really came in and looked to push the pace, so we weren't tested in terms of defensive transition like we will this coming weekend. And I thought really the only problem we had trouble in transition in either game was when we turned the ball over, and we had some mindless turnovers in each of those. And some one-on-one defense I thought was bad. Stanford, we had a nice little lead and a cushion, and then they went on a pretty significant run, and it was a bunch of one-on-one stuff, which sometimes in a grinded-out kind of game becomes that way. When we're guarding their sets, I think by nature teams want to put their best players in a situation they can try to get to the rim, and we were deficient in that category. But, it was good. The snow that hit before the Stanford game, and the game times always makes it a little bit interesting. But it was a really good environment, I thought, for both those ball games.
Well, I thought so too. And one of the things that stood out to me, and you and I talked about this, it may have been on one of our pregame conversations because we didn't have a show last week, was in Southern California, really the last couple of weeks with Booth having been out, Rylan and Timmy, these guys were playing a lot of minutes for you. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of see that in some of those games against good point guards and teams pushing it in Southern California. by the last couple of minutes of the game, those guys were, they were almost like a prize fighter holding on for that last bell. And it seemed to me that you guys had a pretty conscious effort to rotate and keep some guys fresh. You used Alfonso Plummer a little earlier than usual. You were using Jackson Brenchley a little bit more as well. He was starting, but it seemed you were rotating. And the one thing I got out of both those games was you got some contributions at key times from a lot of different guys. Plummer hit a couple of big shots. Jackson Brenchley hit 2 huge threes, one in the first half and that late corner three in the Stanford game as well. So your rotation was about it, and then you got some good contributions from Lahat, too, who hadn't played a lot of minutes in the last couple of games. He came in and gave you some pretty good energy. So it looked to me like if it was your plan consciously or unconsciously, keeping some guys fresh, but those guys that came in for you gave you a little something off the
bench. Yes, and we certainly do. It's important for us. And we talk a lot in our program about trust, and it's a two-way street. And I kind of flash back to being a player, and you need to get an opportunity. And I know Alfonso's a prime example. I think he played 13 minutes in the first half, and he hadn't played those kind of extended minutes in a long time. So before we as a coaching staff can probably talk about trusting our players, there's the flip side of it is, hey, let's get out there. And I told Fonz prior to the weekend, the games, I said, we need you dialed in. You're going to be a big part of what we're doing moving forward. You will make some mistakes, but I thought those guys are feeling much more comfortable and confident, and it's good for our team, to get some guys that step up and make some plays. They were both really good defensively as well. And that's the issue I think with our team is finding 8 or 9 guys in a rotation, assuming you don't have any foul trouble. But I think guys are really figuring it out. And Jackson had a great play for a dunk to Brandon Carlson after he hit the three.
Yep.
He drew some guys and made a nice little bounce pass and got that big dunk for Brandon. So Brandon with 8 blocks in that game I thought was huge. The young kids are not seeming like they're young kids anymore, and we're going to need to have some fun and compete. And I'm enjoying being around these guys, and I think they're enjoying being around each other.
Well, you guys get the wins at home, and that's fantastic. One of them being a quad 1 win helps your resume quite a bit. Now the big key for you, and we'll talk about the matchups, is figuring out how to take it on the road, right?
Yeah, I mean, we need to try to play the same type of basketball regardless of where it is and just grind it out a little bit more. And I sense that we're going to be ready to play on the road. I felt good about our USC game a while back and even some stretches in the UCLA game where we're not that far away. We just have to keep believing and stay in the moment for that next possession. And, you got to figure out a way to drum up some of that energy that maybe the crowd would give you. And some of that comes with being mature and, a little bit more physical, I think, certainly on the road. And we're excited. I think we've all heard enough about how we haven't won a conference game, and both teams are going to be great teams, but I think we're clicking on a few more cylinders than we have in the past, and a normal 3-day break prior to the Sunday game a week ago. So I feel confident about it, and we can't make a bigger deal out of it. We just have to play good basketball.
Well, and we'll talk about those matchups with Oregon State this Thursday night and then Oregon on Sunday, but we're now entering that part of the schedule area where you've seen these guys.
Yeah.
You beat Oregon State already, so there's going to be no secrets there, and your guys, whether they're at home or on the road, they know they can beat this team, and you were a whisker away from beating Oregon here as well. You had that last look to at least tie it late, so while you haven't beaten them yet, you know you can play with them.
Right.
And now the key, I guess, is just to match that energy and play with that kind of energy you played in this building against them on the road.
Yeah, and having that the experience under your belt and knowing those teams, we won't be talking as much about personnel. It still comes down to just playing really hard. And one thing I think we all know by now is that there aren't any easy games. There's some really talented teams. Each present a different list of challenges, but it's a grind. And I think our guys have grown up in that sense to understand that, some of the stuff we talk about in a practice setting, and you try to create some obstacles and some adversity in a practice setting so you can get that road mentality. I think our guys understand that, and so trying to simplify some things, and we're excited.
Well, yeah, if there was ever a case to be made for anything can happen, UCLA, who's not been good really on the road at all, went into Arizona, a place that might be the toughest building in the league to play in, and won going away on Saturday. And then you have a team like Oregon State go into Eugene and beat the Ducks. So anything can happen in this league on a given night. We'll come back on the other side, some honors today for Utah basketball, and we'll pass out some of our weekly awards as well. All that coming up here on the Coaches Show, which is brought to you by Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. Keep it crisp, Utah fans, and please drink responsibly with Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light. More on the Coaches Show ahead on this Monday night. It's Utah basketball from Learfield, IMG College. Pepsi and Mountain Dew. Grab an ice-cold Mountain Dew and hoop it up in style, Utah fans. Proud sponsor of Utah basketball. The Utes on the road this week. Oregon State on Thursday night, right around a 7 o'clock start time here in the mountain time zone. Gill Coliseum, great old gym, and last time, at least in the regular season, we'll see Trace Tinkle. Who knows, maybe in the Pac-12 tournament too, but we've seen a lot of Trace Tinkle. Then on Sunday, it's one of those Thursday-Sunday, thankfully not a Wednesday-Sunday, but a Thursday-Sunday, Sunday night even, 7 o'clock Sunday night at Matthew Knight Arena in Eugene against the Oregon Ducks. So that's what's coming up this week, and we'll have all those games right here along the network. Brandon Carlson was named Freshman of the Week this week in the Pac-12 Conference. That's the third. You've had Rylan win it twice, and Brandon win it once, I believe, this year as Freshman of the Week in the Pac-12 Conference. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really cool. You know, our guys they're growing together. They're playing a lot of minutes as freshmen, and proud of them. I think Brandon has really made a
conscious effort and a significant improvement and understanding how physical it's going to be, and see him, 18-foot jump shots. He's got some confidence to shoot it, and it's fun to see these kids growing up. They're bringing a little bit to the table, and anytime, 8 block shots was
third in school history, tied with Jason Washburn.
Yeah, it was terrific, and got in foul trouble on Saturday, so wasn't able to really back it up. But having some rim protection is great, and it's neat. It's been a roller coaster ride for a lot of our kids, and that's the fun part when you're kind of on that wave, riding a good feeling, and we've got to try to remain consistent with it.
Well, you can just tell he's just getting a little bit more confident because he's playing. He just hasn't played much, as you've said many times, really played one full year as the guy at Bingham High School. Then he went straight on his mission.
Yep.
And then he comes back in April, and he's having to reacclimate to basketball and to life and knock the mission rust off. But I think really about the last 3 weeks, you're seeing a little bit more out of his game, the defense. Heck, we saw that. I didn't think he could put it on the deck, and he crossed his guy over on the baseline and went in for the layup the other day. That was a great move, too. So we're seeing a little bit more. Yeah,
it's neat.
It really is. And you can tell that he's not thinking as much, because you can always tell when guys are having fun and they're not thinking, because they're smiling and they're waving their arms. And last year when you'd see Timmy Allen or Booth Gotch or Riley Batten, they were all doing this. And this year they're a little bit more comfortable. Now you're seeing Ryland's comfortable and Mickey's comfortable and Brandon's getting there too. And you're not thinking about it. You're just out having fun.
Well, and we're trying to encourage that. If you look up basketball in the dictionary, and I remind our guys all the time, the game will be in there. The word game. And obviously, at our level, sometimes you forget, but it's important to, if you're bringing a great effort and you're trying to do it, so that's the hard part, playing hard, and you're doing it together as a group. There's no reason that you shouldn't be having some fun, knowing there's going to be some mistakes, but celebrate the good things and play happy, play the game fun, and I think that just opens it up, and it exudes a little bit of confidence, and I think it even helps our crowd, to know that we're not in the grinded-out mode. I've tried to relax a little bit, and we're just the kids are soaking everything up, and we're going to take our lumps from time to time. But it's when you're playing the game the right way with the right focus, I think it's important that you sit back and enjoy it, show some emotion, and get everybody involved and smile.
Well, yeah, they're throwing some lobs out there, missing a few, getting a few, and
not catching them all, but we're throwing some.
It's pretty hard to overthrow a 7-footer on a lob, but Ryland found a way to do that the other night.
Yeah.
It looked like he had him, but to your point, I didn't see you get too angry at that or get too frustrated by it. It's because they're out there, they're loose, and the play was there to be made. They just didn't make the play.
Yep, and Coach Connor took those guys down the court today, our big guys in Ryland, and it's stuff you have to work on.
Yeah.
You can't expect to pull it off in live action if you don't. And there's a lot of different ways that teams play your pick and roll coverage. That's the pass that's available, and we've got to be able to click off a few of those repetitions so that the guys can chalk it up to experience and clean it up. But this is an easy group to work with. I've talked to you before. Academically, we're not. If we've had 100 meetings this year, I'll bet you 98 of them have been on basketball. We haven't had any off the court stuff. And it just. You walk into the gym and there's nobody in there that's draining energy from you, and everybody's doing a heck of a job. We're getting great reports from the academic staff and setting records for our GPA. So why not have some fun and know that we're all going to make mistakes? The game's a game of mistakes, and just make sure we stay connected with each other and get on to the next point.
Our team player of the week, by the way, is going to be Brandon Carlson. He was named the freshman of the week in the Pac-12. He had 2 really good games, especially the Stanford game. 15 points, 10 rebounds, 8 blocks are all career highs for him. So our University of Utah Health and Sports Medicine Team Player of the Week, Brandon Carlson. They've got a game plan for your family's health. Visit them online at uofuhealth.org. Brings us to our Subway Sub of the Week. And I mentioned you played 2 or 3 guys off the bench in each game, and there were a couple of guys that we could nominate here. Who do you want to go with?
We'll go with Alfonso Plummer. Yeah.
He was your second leading scorer if I'm not mistaken, in the game on Saturday. I think he had 8 points. He had a lot of guys that had 5, 6, 7, 8. Timmy had 21. But I think Fonts was your second leading scorer with 8 points.
Yeah. No, I 8 or 9 points and gave us a great lift and is getting locked in defensively. It gives us some firepower, playing with some confidence, and I thought he played through a few mistakes, but he also graded out good on the defensive end. So we've talked about him before. He's one of those guys that, things are hard. It's not maybe what you'd hoped, and he's just stayed in the fight, and he's been a joy for all his teammates to be around, and so for all of us to enjoy some of his success, knowing that he's stood for a lot of the right things and stays true with everything. And I think Alfonso's one of those guys, sometimes it takes you a minute to figure this out, that is better in games than he is in practice sometimes. It's okay. It's an okay trait to have when you become better and you've got a little more energy and you do some things in a game that we don't see in practice. That's a positive. Other guys, play a heck of a practice, and they're making a bunch of great plays and then don't quite handle the limelight and the pressure.
Then their eyes get really big as saucers when they get in that game.
Yeah, and when somebody's new to your program, sometimes as a coach you don't realize that. But I've gained a lot of faith and trust in Fonz and love what he stands for, and so we're going to keep throwing him out there to the Wolves.
So he'll be our Subway Sub of the week. If you buy the footlong of the day at Subway restaurants, you can get chips, 2 cookies, and a 20-ounce drink for free at Subway. Just a minor shout-out, though. Lahatchu didn't play a lot the last couple of weeks. Saturday in particular, when Brandon got in some foul trouble, you turned to him, and he gave you some really good energy. He made a really nice move at the end of the half, caught that ball in the post, and did that little sweeping hook shot across the
sky
lane.
Hook.
Yeah, and then he made a couple of free throws, too, and grabbed some rebounds. And so, again, here's another guy that just in his life hasn't played. Yeah, Brandon Carlson's played a lot of basketball in his life, but not recently. Lahat just hadn't played a lot of basketball, period, and this is a pretty high level for him to step in. But, and again, wasn't able to do a lot last year because of the broken foot, so he's coming along nice.
Yeah, and again, he's a freshman.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm excited for all these kids, and it's really hard to be, if you're really good with a ton of experience, it's hard to be a freshman.
Yeah.
And so, they keep learning and keep working, and Lahat's as coachable as anybody. The game just isn't always a natural thing for him.
Right.
And so he's got to keep putting the reps in and the time, and I still think Rocco can probably put 20 pounds on his frame. We got to, if he got beefy, he'd look a little bit like Serge Ibaka, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll.
That's probably a couple of years away.
Come on.
Ideally, though, you'd probably like to put about 25 pounds on him. How about Brandon Carlson? About the same?
Yeah, I think 15, 20 pounds. Those kids can carry that on their frame for sure. And I know they're both probably done growing up. And now their body, with the calories and the great job that our staff does over there feeding guys, and it's hard during the season to gain weight. Jakob Pertl was one of those rare cases that gained 20 pounds during his freshman year. It's really hard because you're always burning way more than you can take in, and it's hard for those guys to eat. But I could see Brandon and Lahat both putting 20 pounds on, and that's an area that they're a little bit deficient in. Bodies bouncing around off of them, and that's going to come with time.
Yeah.
Be fun to watch, the before and after shots.
Exactly. Look at the freshman year versus the sophomore and junior year as these guys come along. All right, we're going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, first trip on the roadie to the Northwest is Oregon State. Obviously a team Utah knows a little bit because they played them about a month ago. So we'll talk a little bit about Wayne Tinkle's team, his son, and what lies ahead Thursday, and then we'll talk about the Oregon Ducks and go around the conference and do some other stuff, all coming up on the Coaches Show, presented by Smith's right here from Learfield, IMG College. basketball offices here in the Huntsman basketball facility.
I'm
in the
with
lobby.
Spence Checketts tonight here at the football complex.
Oh, man. 2 games on the road. Can Utah get its first conference road win of the year? They'll try it at Oregon State on Thursday night, and then back on the road at Eugene on Sunday. This is one of those long trips. I think the conference has finally done away with the Wednesday Sundays. We had a couple of those a few years ago, which were just ludicrous. Thursday, Sunday, still a long time away. You guys are going to spend a little time in between games up in Portland. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it makes it hard. The game Sunday's, I think, on Fox.
And it's on at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our TV partners with the Pac-12, when they choose those games, those are the Sunday games. That hurts you a little bit. But it's, we'll be chartering the flight, so we'll get home Sunday. We won't miss any school Monday. That's the big thing that's changed a little bit is, those Wednesdays. You can miss the better part of a week. And the best interest of our student athletes, it's really rough. And it's hard to be in a hotel. I mean, I'm not complaining. This is not work per se when you talk about what some people do physically but it's hard to be in a hotel with the young group, away from it for that long. So I think the league, we put a few different changes in, and they're more cognizant of trying to keep us out of some of those lengthy trips.
So it'll be Corvallis on Thursday night, Wayne Tinkle's team, your old teammate at Montana, a team that you guys saw here in Salt Lake City a month ago and got the better of over at the John M. Huntsman Center. And they started conference play pretty well, and they've kind of come back to the pack a little bit, though they got their best win of the year on Saturday when they knocked off their rival, the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, no, they've got a bunch of experience. I think it's been interesting. A couple of their wins, they were actually, came back and I thought were real fortunate to win. And then a handful of their losses they've been in control of that they end up finding a way to lose. But it's a, experience with Thompson and Tinkle and Reichel and the leading shot blocker in our league and Kyler Kelly. So they have a bunch of the components, of being a good team. And I think they're in the situation of finding out how hard this league can be. But I like the way they play, and there's a lot of similarities between our programs, and we've always had some good battles in Corvallis. So we'll look forward to it.
It's a great old gym too. If you guys ever get a trip, there's some good old gyms. Heck, Ed up at Washington's great, but this is Jimmy and I kind of joke when we walk in. You can smell the popcorn that's popped in there for 50 years.
Yeah.
You can smell the
Ralph
sweat.
Miller.
Yeah, you can smell the sweat in the gymnasium. It has that old gym feel, and it's an old gym because they've got the windows up at the top. They don't put many windows in arenas anymore, but they're up there. And then you see Ralph Miller and you see Gary Payton and a guy that was a little before you, but he was a terrific player. Steve Johnson was outstanding in his day up there. And
I got traded for him.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Johnson was a really good player.
Yep.
From where to where?
I was traded. He was traded from Portland, San Antonio and Portland.
All part of your rookie deal.
Yeah.
When you thought you were a Blazer.
Yeah. And Charlie Sitton's a heck of a Beaver, too.
And then you called the secretary at the switchboard, and she told you had been traded to San Antonio.
I said, yeah, I'm just trying to make a few summer plans. Where do I need to be and when? And they said, oh, no, we've traded you. It just hasn't been announced yet. And I was like, wow, this is so much from the good old college days when you thought you were important to not being very important.
And then one of your contemporaries, A.C. Green.
Yeah.
Who was a heck of a rebound. I mean, A.C. Green was a terrific player. High energy guy that could just really come in and guard you.
Yeah.
And he kind of did the dirty work on a lot of those Laker teams.
Yeah.
He was there kind of at the end of the Magic, Worthy, and boy, he did a lot of dirty work for those guys.
Defended really well. The game was different then.
Yeah.
We've always talked about having a couple. The Pistons were winning, and you needed a couple of guys that weren't necessarily pretty with what they did, but could be physical, and that both AC and myself. I mean, that's why we had a job. The game was you had to have 2 or 3 of those types of guys on your roster.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be a great atmosphere. If they're playing well, they draw pretty well, but the building's great. Well, what did you guys have success with first time around? Why did you feel like you got the better of them here at your place?
Well, I think we did a really good job on the the elite scores that they had. Initially, Trace Tinkle, he had about 13, 14 points early in the game.
Yeah.
And, once we realized that Timmy Allen wasn't going to be in foul trouble, we put him on him, and I thought he did a really good job. Wayne puts Trace in positions. If you put somebody on Trace Tinkle that's as big as he is, it kind of takes some of the post stuff away, but they figure out a way to try to take advantage of you on the perimeter. And vice versa. If somebody's as quick as him, then he'll post you up. They got a bunch of post-up baskets against Oregon, but Timmy's a pretty good defender. He's kind of that hybrid defender that can guard a guy on the perimeter, but also, not be taken advantage of in the post. And I thought he was really good. I know we got out in transition based on that defense and got a number of early scores, which took a little heat off of our offense in the half court. But no, it's Ethan Thompson and Trace Tinkle, definitely the double-headed head of that snake, and those guys are elite players. They get to the free throw line. We played them without fouling, so those are all elements that we're going to have to stay consistent with.
And you mentioned they had some post success the other night against Oregon too, which is unusual because Oregon's usually got some pretty big physical bodies on the inside. But did they get Kyler Kelly posted up a little bit?
It wasn't so much posted up for Kelly as it was in pick and roll coverage, kind of lobbing it up to the rim and getting him opportunities. And both Trace and Ethan are big. They're big ball in hand offensive players, and they can see over some of that length. But they posted Trace a whole bunch, and it was a great rivalry game. Seeing that environment, that single game of the week, and it was kind of back and forth. It looked like Oregon was going to run away with it, and then there was some big Oregon State plays. So they're both quality with a bunch of guys that have been around the block, maybe two different styles of teams, but we're looking forward to getting out. And it's our only trip to the Northwest. We won't go to the Washingtons this year, so see what we can shake up.
And obviously on Sunday it's the Oregon Ducks, and the Ducks are a really good team. And, we've talked about it before, but, he hurts you here a little bit. He's hurt a lot of people, and that's Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah, and it was crazy. I mean, you just keep watching him, and, I know who I'm voting for if I get a vote for any of that postseason stuff, the accolades. But it reaches all the way to back the end of last year, too, when they got on a roll. And the kid's a leader, and he made big plays against Oregon State last weekend. Big plays, and they had a couple costly offensive fouls that kept him from getting a chance. But he knows when to kind of take it under his own wing and get it done, and he's a terrific passer, tough as nails on defense. So he's a player of the year kind of guy, not just for our conference, but I think depending on how Oregon does in the big scheme of things, he's a national player of the year. And really the prototype of what college basketball should be, where a guy has been around as long as he's been and, paid the dues. I mean, we need more of those guys that are going to last this thing out right until the end of the senior year, and, an Oregon kid that's doing it the right way. And so I hope people will pay attention to that it's not just his accolades from this year, but it's the blueprint of how he's gotten where he is and how that team wouldn't be even close to where they are without him.
Yeah, he kind of came up with the Jordan Bells and the Dylan Brooks and the Chris Bouchers. So he's been through the battles, and the one thing you'll always know about him is he wants the ball at the end of the game. Whether it's the end of the shot clock or the end of the game clock, he wants that ball, and he does not shy away from taking that shot. But he is getting good help right now in the backcourt from Duarte.
Yeah, and Richardson. I mean, they've got some firepower. Take some heat off of him, but he's a load, man, and he's so strong. If he's got one little angle going right or left, and a lot of guys are a little bit favor one or the other, and he's pretty 50-50. If you're just a little bit out of position with the hesitation, and he does such a good job of keeping his shoulders square and strong, getting to the rim. And you throw that in with his ability to pass, makes him a tough guard. And like our last game where he had two 25, 30-foot jump shots. You're going to pack off him and anticipate him coming, and he's able to shoot it from deep. So he really does have a lot of different ways he can hurt you.
I thought really the guy that might have hurt you guys the most, though, in the last game might have been Will Richardson.
Yeah.
I think he had about 13 or 14
Yep.
points in that game. But
Going left.
He's left-handed. You know he's going to go left, but it's hard to stop him from doing that. And he got to the rim 3 or 4 times.
Most of his big plays.
Yeah, they were
big plays. Those were when we had it figured out in some other areas. But that's the nature of Pac-12 basketball. Is I think you don't have to be one of the first guys on the scouting report. There's a bunch of good players that'll step up at various times, and you need to know your personnel report. And hopefully, I think our team has grown in that regard to understand when we tell you that he's going to go left 94% of the time, there's a pretty good chance he's going to go left. And left means really left. Like, you don't give him a little bit of, thinking you're going to shade that side. It's about taking his left away. And those are things our team's improved on.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back and talk about the Pac-12 just a little bit. Larry's seen everybody play now, what his impressions are, and how he sees the league big picture this year versus some other years. We'll do that coming up right here on the Coaches Show from Smith's, right here from Learfield IMG College. Quicker here in the second half of the show. Larry Krystkowiak, Coach's Show here tonight from Smith's. Gotten a little chatty tonight. We always do. Then we have to speed up at the end of the show. We have to go hurry up. It's like the shot clock's ticking down.
We'll start talking faster.
No, it's not really that. We just have to be more economical with our words.
Okay.
We were talking about the conference a little bit. Your two opponents this week, the Oregon schools. You've seen everybody now. What's your impression of the conference this year? Do you think it's better top to bottom this year than it was last year?
Yeah, without a doubt. And one of the elements that's better is there's the bottom portion of the league is much better.
Right.
And that all gets into those net rankings. But the teams that are at the bottom, fourth or third of our conference. Still got a bunch of good wins in the preseason, and no, I like the conference. I think Colorado, Oregon, Arizona, Stanford, those are teams to me that are locks in the tournament, and I'd like to think that maybe we could get half of our conference in if we can finish strong and the right teams win the right games. But it feels much more challenging and difficult, and I think there's an awful lot of talent on a variety of teams that we haven't had before, and the new coaching changes I think have really solidified some of those teams as well.
Well, I think that's where you go is, there's two new coaches in the league, and they were coaching teams that were toward the bottom and picked toward the bottom, but you can see the influence. You saw over the weekend Mark Fox, who you know very well. That Cal team is not a super skilled team, but they know who they are, and they know what their game plan is, and they play really hard, and it's kind of the same thing. Washington State might actually be a little bit more talented player-wise, a couple of better players, but you can see that Kyle Smith has got those guys a bit more organized, and you know it from your time here early. I mean, you inherited some stuff, and it was tough first couple of years, not a lot of talent, but when you get kids that buy in and will play hard, even if they're making mistakes, if they're making them at 100% and full speed, you can live with that stuff.
Yeah, and I like what you said, where you just, they know what it is they're trying to do, and they do it. Cal sends 4 guys back on defensive transition, so they don't give you any easy ones, kind of like we did when we first got here. I think Mick Cronin's doing a heck of a job at UCLA. There was, a bunch of doubters early on, but they got themselves on a nice little roll, and that's a group that seems to be functioning. It's just teams that aren't going to beat themselves, I think, is the one thing where you got to go out and beat them, and there'll be some deficiencies on every team. But when you have that identity as to what it is you're trying to do, and there's no surprises what it is you're trying to do, but you make that team beat you, I think that's where a lot of the success from our league is coming right now. Is there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles and trickery. It's just everybody's kind of has their identity, and it's fun on any given night to have those matchups.
Yeah, I agree with what Larry says. I think there's 4 teams that are probably tournament locks now, a 5th that you can probably put, maybe pencil them in, but I think there's a really good shot that 6 teams could get in depending on what happens over the next month, and then maybe something down in Vegas too.
Yeah, and it might be one of those bubble teams that gets an opportunity to play 3 games in Vegas against some of those teams, and it comes down to a lot of the metrics, and for us it's the same story. You want to try to be playing your best basketball at the right time of year. I feel like we're trending in that direction, and get some guys back healthy, and see if we can finish this thing. 7 league games left. It's amazing.
It's weird to say this. We're a month from right now. We're going to be down in Las Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament.
Yeah.
That's how quickly it comes along. Time out on the show.
Yeah.
When we come back, I want to pick his brain a little bit because I have a lot of people ask me all the time about what's coming in next year. So I'll have Larry give us just kind of a quick synopsis of how those guys that are joining the team next year are doing right now in high school and where they might have a role next year. All that on the Coaches Show. stretch. Get a lot of questions about next year. You know, people are always interested. They get caught up in the here and now, but they always want to know what's next. You've got a good recruiting class signed and coming in, so let's go over a few of these guys and how they're doing this year and kind of how you kind of project them moving forward. We'll start first with a guy you guys got to see last weekend or 2 weekends ago, Ian Martinez, down in Southern California, playing for J. Sarah High School, one of the best guards in California this year. Obviously, Ian's dad, Henry's on your staff now, but he's having a good senior year, isn't he?
He is, and he's had a hip issue the last couple of weeks, so that's been unfortunate. Their team was one of the top 5 teams, and I think they've fallen out of that. It's so important with what they do with J. Sarah. But first off, just a great kid. It's a great story, for their family coming here and getting acclimated to the States, and a tremendous family to spend time with, grateful, positive culture. And I don't believe I'm certain we haven't recruited anybody that's more athletic in terms of a vertical type of jump and some fast twitch things, which it's crazy. It's well over 40-inch vertical jump, so.
Good shooter too, right?
He's a good shooter, scorer, good passer. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think he's super coachable and wants to get better, and is a real student of the game, like wants to be in there and improve everything he can. And so it'll be fun to get his family all settled in here next year. I'm sure, it's not easy for Henry to be here solo while he's back finishing up his senior year, but bringing that family together will be a lot of fun, and we're excited about having him. Have had an opportunity to cross paths and see him a few times, so he's an elite level guard, and we'll be able to break out a few of those plays where we're throwing lobs to guys.
Well, here's you've got another Scandinavian coming in next year. Not a Finland player, not a Finnish player, but a Swedish player,
yeah.
Pelle Larsson. And I was watching some clips with your staff the other day of this kid. He's a big guard, Larry, and I don't just mean tall. I mean he's pretty well put together, about 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, he's when he was here on his visit, I made a trip over to Sweden, and I was only there for about 24 hours in the fall. But when he came on his visit here, I mean, I just remember there was a time we were walking up the stairs. I think it was over at the Huntsman Center, and his calves were bulging out of his jeans, and that's not something. But the last guy, and it kind of reminded me a little bit from our crossing paths and knowing the Barton family around here, was Cody Barton.
Yeah.
They look, they're real similar in terms of stature, and he loves playing physically. I think that's one advantage that he's going to have coming in here as a guard, and he's playing with a bunch of men in Sweden, and it's like a Swedish league right now. So a little bit like Jakob, where they've been Mickey, guys that come in and understand the level of physicality, but he's an elite athlete as well, really good defender, beat you off the dribble, good three-point shooter, and an unbelievable student and a person. So it's fun when you get some of those guys rolling in here in the backcourt, be able to put together a nice little backcourt, I think, here for some years to come.
And then the last guy, real quick, is here in the state of Utah, a little south of town. He's at Wasatch Academy, Caleb Lohner.
Yeah, terrific year, and is really, he's had a great senior year. They're just in a holding pattern now until the national championship, the Dix thing. But they've, one of the higher ranked. They knocked off the number 2 team in the country a few weeks ago. They're ranked. And Caleb, speaking of Pelle, is very much ready. I mean, he looks a little bit like a football player as well. Super athletic, great kid. That's the one thing, they're all great people. But I think in talking to Caleb, he's really inspired and motivated right now to be able to stay in state, play in front of some of his friends and family, and he's close with my kids. Just when you start getting to know some of these guys, you're not going to bet against them when you know what they're cut of and the right stuff and treating people right and having a real hunger for the game and guys that want to be here. So we're fired up. But he's a man, and he's going to be ready to compete. And again, not be behind in terms of the weight room and those types of things. And then Mason Falsev is a guy that we've got, but he'll be going on a mission.
And could be a football player. Kyle Whittingham shouted him out at National Letter of Intent Day the other day saying, we got 5 of the top 6 players in the state, technically 6 of the top 7, but one of them's playing for basketball next year.
Yeah, and
he'll be on a mission.
It better remain that way, too. I can see where he's doing his work there. Yeah. Mason's a tough kid. And that's a big part of sports, is having a little grit to you and determination. And I love that. I love, you just bring it up and you completely aren't thinking about it short of some correspondence with the kids and staying in touch with them. But you're so in the moment trying to get through this week and this. And then when you're reminded, oh, yeah, these guys will be here this summer to start working with our guys, I really think it's going to be a great addition and can't wait to have them all show up on campus.
Final timeout. Back to wrap it up next. This is Utah basketball from Learfield, IMG College. Reminder, Thursday night at Oregon State, Sunday night at Oregon. Big weekend for you guys. Try and get a couple of W's on the road, but you appear to be in good shape, and you're going to take everybody on the road with you, and you might have a full team for the first time in a few weeks.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned with Booth and Mark Reiniger. He's had a rough year, man. We put Mark on scholarship, and he sprained his ankle, like one of the worst ankle sprains we've ever had here since I've been here. And then took a heck of a blow a couple weeks ago, and he's been in concussion protocol ever since. I feel bad for those guys, but they are bouncing back, and we'll get out of here Wednesday afternoon and try to shake it up a little bit.
See you up at Corvallis.
Sounds good, partner.
All right, that's head coach Larry Krystkowiak. We'll talk to you guys Thursday night from Gill Coliseum in Corvallis, Oregon. Thanks to our entire crew here on hand tonight. And Brady Clark back in the studio. Talk to you Thursday night. This is Utah basketball from Learfield, IMG College. Good night.
Blow it up, Bill. There's John.